Welcome to Through the Glass. Today I'm very excited to welcome Kenete Simms. He is the engineer and creative management for superstar Tierra Whack. Kenete, thank you so much for coming on the show, man. I really appreciate you making time. You are not a local, so you drove a bit to get here.
A small hour, but ain't got anything from my guy Michael.
Well, I appreciate that, man.
Sure.
Thank you so much. Tell me, what's your work with Tierra is it doesn't get much bigger. Her music, your guys' collaboration is huge. You guys are killing it.
Yeah.
I personally love the music. My kids personally love the music, the stuff they can listen to. I got to censor a bit of it.
Yeah.
You understand.
Yeah.
Tell me a bit how you first got involved with working with Tierra.
So, being an engineer in the city of Philadelphia, I'm gonna skip around, I'm a bit all over the place, but started off engineering in the city of Philadelphia, and still friend, and her old manager, Ant, he had a few clients that he used to bring to me, and when he acquired Tierra, essentially, when he started managing Tierra, because she started from the freestyle era, and she blew up from this one freestyle she had online, and it was on his show. It was called We Run the Streets. It got really popular and big, and he ended up managing her, and I was one of the popular engineers in the city at the time, and me and him had a relationship, and so brought her to me. We worked one time, one day, and it was cool. It was fun, and she disappeared. She disappeared from the music scene in Philadelphia, because we're both in Philadelphia. Disappeared from the music scene in Philadelphia completely, and she moved to Atlanta, which I found out later. Moved to Atlanta, and she hit me on Twitter. I saw her the DM. She hit me on Twitter. She was like, "Hey, I remember the session I had with you. I really enjoyed it. I'm moving back to Philadelphia, but I'm not doing the same thing. I'm not." She was known as Dizzle Diz previous, and she was like, Don't call me Dizzle Diz. I'm just going by my name, Tierra Whack. And if people don't know, that's actually her real name on her ID. And so I'm like, yeah, sure. And so she came back. She was like, "I'm gonna send you some songs," because Dizzle Diz was the rapper, freestyler, and jump in front of a camera and perform and entertain you. And Tierra Whack is now the artist, and she's creating records now. It's no longer I'm just giving you ill flows and whatever. She's creating records now, and she sent me a few records. She sent me two. I think one of them was called Paper Clips, and I'm listening to them, and I'm like, oh, these are cool. These are cool. It's different. It's not what I'm not gonna say at the time I was recording. I'm involved in music because I loved it, and I used to write, and a way for me to remain in music for me was I didn't want to get a job. So I'm what in this field is you're guaranteed money outside of the fact that I didn't want to pay for studio time. I'm what in music are you almost guaranteed money, or is it an easier way to? I'm recording people. That's a way to make money. So I can learn that, record myself, and also support myself in a sense. So lost track. Oh, so she sends me the records. I'm this is different, and it was different from what I am used to recording.
What kind of stuff were you used to recording?
It was just freestyles, and I had some incredible artists come past. But they always had situations, and then I've always heard things. I'm but it's not my place. I was the push button engineer, and it was yo, just make myself sound good, Kenete. People came to me for what it is I was able to do, and I think any good engineer is able to get what it is that you have in your head through the speakers perfectly, essentially. And I did a good job at that, so people always return. Because I wasn't the push button guy. I would tell you to do it again, because this is our work at this point. It's me. I can't do nothing with a sloppy take. So if I'm just get my $35 an hour, yeah, do it again. Or no, that was a fine take. If I didn't like it, and if it wasn't pleasing to me, I'm do it again. Even if it wasn't music that I enjoyed, I always was able to find a piece of something or someone that I something that somebody had that I did enjoy, and pull from that, whether it was the beat, their tone, whatever. It didn't even have to be the song. I could not like the song, but whatever I found interesting, I'm I'm here to help you give your best at what you feel that you're great at. It's not about my, personal opinion on your music. I'm trying to give you to give your all in what it is that you like. So I don't care if you're going in there and you're singing the ABCs. I'm going to be like, nah, you can get that B better, or you can get that C better. Like, we're both on this ride together because it's like your journey. I'm just guiding you from behind. Like, maybe you should left, not guiding you from in front, because essentially it's your career.
But it reflects on you nonetheless.
100%.
And you're only as good as the last recording you did. So that's the thing. Everyone's going to be like, oh, what did he do last?
Yep, 100%. And so back to Tierra, she sent me the songs. I'm like, let's just go. And I'm like, let's meet up. So we met up. And there were things that she had to work on, of course. Just like, we can do that together. So I'm like, look, here's the deal. This is how I make my money. But you can come to the studio anytime you want. And when I have sessions and I need to make a few dollars, like, maybe you sit outside and just wait. And that's what she did. She came down, and eventually, like, I just started canceling sessions. So this was just me being broke and believing in her enough to say, like, I have a few small relationships in this business by way of my brother. I watched his career. I took small notes because I was a little brother. I didn't have a say-so in his career. And so I'm able to help guide you in yours the best way that I can. But you have to know what it is that you want to do, because my job is to only manage your direction. Essentially articulate what it is. Like, the same thing that I do with her music is the same thing I do with, like, her creative pieces. Like, how is it best to get this idea to the public so it doesn't confuse them? So you get what kind of like a translator, essentially.
So what did you hear early on? You said she was sending you demos.
She had paper
Were
clips.
they produced, or was it just vocal over?
It was her recording on her laptop. It essentially would be like somebody doing a voice memo on a laptop. Like, she didn't know how to like do doubles, nothing. So it was just always like a single track and her voice, and I understood the song's potential or what it was that she was trying or attempting to articulate.
Was there even beats or melody with it, or just straight vocal?
Yeah, the beats, melodies, all that, and from like beats from her friends. So maybe the production wasn't the best, but she did what she could at the time, and so I'm like, oh, I can figure this out. This is easy, and it's for sure going to work.
So what did you hear early on? What was the quality that jumped out at you?
She had the ability to have the same story or come from the same background, essentially, as everybody else, in the environment that we grew up in, but express it different. And my thing with anything, when I'm dealing with artists, is like, cool, like, okay, you sing, but how do we get you to be the yellow hoodie in the room full of pink ones? Like, that's important for me, because it's like, okay, cool, we all have hoodies, and it's like, do you want to go in this room wearing a pink one like everybody else? Because if you do, I can't do nothing with that. And also not forcing yourself to stand out, because we all say, hey, everybody's different, but for whatever reason, people like to blend together. And I guess it's a comfortability thing.
It's human nature.
Yeah. It was the no fear thing. A lot of times she was talking about like elephants and things that like you don't typically talk about in rap, but it stands out. And I think things that work are things that people either hate or love. Anything that's like neutral, and this is just my opinion, like anything that like becomes like a neutral thing, like kind of falls by the wayside.
We're just talking about that on the last podcast. Rob Thorpe, filmmaker. We were talking about there's very rarely something that is great, and people will disagree on what great is.
Yeah.
That doesn't divide people.
Yeah.
If something's right in the middle, it's just like real milquetoast.
Yep.
It's like, oh, please.
Yep.
Please.
Yeah.
So that's almost a signal, especially to someone like me and to you and to many other artists out there that something is interesting. If there's a like a third of people who are like, that's stupid, that sucks, I'm like, oh, good. And you don't want much more than a third.
Yeah, 100%.
But that's a signal, because that means someone is taking risks.
Yep.
And when I started listening to Tierra's music, I mean, that came through right away. We can get into the technical aspects and the creative aspects, so many things, but just strictly from a lyrical standpoint.
Yeah.
I'm like, is she really talking about food that much? These themes and childhood themes, childish but not in a negative way. Childish themes and like it felt like a warm blanket.
Yeah.
Some of the lyrical content. I'm like, man, this is the coziest story ever. And of course, some stuff, you know, is more edgy, more aggressive, and all that. And all the songs blend all that. But the amount of things that felt like comfort, childhood, food, just straight up like a blankie.
It's like being it's being a child. You know, it's being a child in a room full of adults, and you belong there, and now you're trying to speak their language, essentially. And like, I guess we've kind of found a way to do that. It's like mentally, I'm technically still a child. Like all the I like crayons. Give me crayons. Type thing. I don't want color pencils. They seem a bit mature. Just give me crayons, and broken ones too. You know, like that that type of thing.
So when she came back to Philadelphia, you guys just started working right away.
She came back from the songs that she sent me. I'm like, yo, we can re-record these. Did that. They sounded pretty good. And I just let her come in, and I taught her how to record herself a little better than what she knew. Because sometimes being in the room, you could also be in the way. And so we created a system in which it's hard to like be yourself sometimes, especially me and her just met. So like, let me show you how to do this. I'll leave the room and I'll come back and I'll piece and I'll move things around, and then we can agree. Because when somebody's watching you be essentially what they think is creative, you feel like you're being judged. And it's like, oh, he probably thinks me saying mice poop is stupid. Like, he doesn't like that. And you're not comfortable. I'm like, nah, do your thing. I'll come back and, you know, I'll piece some things around to the point where she got comfortable enough for me just to be in the room and be like, yo, what do you think about that? Or and then you get into that awkward space to where somebody trusts your opinion so much that they want your opinion on every line. And she gets into that space sometimes, and other times she'll get through it and then come back and say, yo, what do you think about this? And I'm like, well, maybe we should do this. And I'm only maneuvering or I guess manipulating the things that she has put in place already. So it's not like I'm not trying to change her. And I think that's really important, you know, from the engineer side and even management. I think a lot of times I've seen managers like create an artist different from the one that they were approached with, if you get what I mean.
Well, a lot of that comes down to ego.
Yep.
A lot of that comes down to, you know, people trying to impose and flex their ideas as opposed to looking at art as a garden. Something that, okay, how do we make this grow in the best way? How can we get this in the sunlight? How can we get some better fertilizer, healthier fertilizer on it?
100%. And any added pieces, like, I would need your approval. Like, hey, if I had, I'm okay with saying, like, because she trusts me, and you got to get that trust first. Because she trusts me, when I'm like, hey, I think this flower will look nice in your garden, she's like, okay, yeah, I would like that. But that's after knowing her. A lot of times, man's like, oh, I love what you did, but couldn't we change this? It's like, did you love what I did? Or did you not? I can't love it and then be like, let's change this.
Well, there's so many people who are ready to blow you up.
Yeah.
And get you feeling excited because they want you to feel good about them.
Yeah.
And that's you see that so much in art. And art is such a vulnerable thing. I mean, you described yourself earlier before we started shooting, you know, as an introvert.
Yeah.
And I get that.
Yeah.
I spoke with Tierra a couple times. I got the feeling she was very guarded.
Yeah.
And I respect that. I wasn't like pressing her and hanging out talking about grandmas. I think we talked about grandmas and family.
Yeah.
And in the brief conversations we had. But it seems like the two of you together was a really natural combination.
Yeah.
No one was trying to flex on anybody.
Yeah. No, we are two. Like, I'm a person that doesn't want to be in the way, and I don't want to be the star in the room. And I think that sits well with somebody with a big personality like Tierra. She has a big personality when it's time, and other times she's exactly like me, and that's where, like, I guess we kind of sit well with each other. I never want to be like, hey, Kenete's here. Like, I'd rather like people not even know that I'm like there, type of thing.
You were writing your own music, and you had considered being an artist.
Yeah.
Well, you were an artist yourself, but you were at a crossroads of whether to go further with it yourself, and you decided not to.
Yeah.
For that reason, what was that like to decide? No, I want to be a part of something else that I'm not the focus of, but I can be integral to.
I think I had thought about that for like years, even during my artistry, and like my friends like enjoyed whatever it is I was creating at the time. I think when me and Tierra came together is when I finally decided like you got to pick one, because you can't invest into somebody else's career while having like your own self-interest. And so I'm like, I can be way more vocal behind the scenes, and I can like it's hard for me to I have perfectionist issues, so it's hard for me to like make decisions for myself. And I guess it's easier, and which might be a coward move in a sense, like yeah, you do this and this and this on stage, because if you fall, it's not me, type of thing. But
you're being honest.
Yeah.
You're not, you're coming from an honest place, and if someone's listening to you, that means they trust you. So I push back on that. I don't think it's cowardly, but it's certainly easier than saying it to yourself.
Yeah. And so, and so in that, I am very careful of like what I'm telling her to go out there with. And I'm checking it, and sometimes it gets frustrating for her, because she likes to know, and like, okay, this is what we're doing, and I'm like 5 minutes before, I'm like, wait, let me go check something, let me make sure there's nobody in the front row with a red shirt, because you have this line here, and I don't want to offend anybody. So I'm like always constantly like double checking in my mind to make sure everything is perfect, and it never is, but for the most part, I think we have been successful in getting the things that she has in her mind articulated properly to the public or her audience.
Well, you're in a unique position. I really have not met anyone on the professional level who's both a recording engineer for a serious artist and a manager for a serious artist. I didn't even know that was possible. How did you, assuming two gigantic roles for something that has grown to be gigantic, how did that come about, and how do you have time for that? Like, how does that happen?
So I guess the best way to manage it was that because I'm an introvert, so she has two. So me and Johnny Montina, that's my guy. I don't know why I fumbled on that, and
he's a sweetheart too.
Yeah,
I spoke to him a few times. He's super cool.
That's my guy, and he 100% makes this doesn't work without him, like the dynamic. And I think that's also important, like knowing what you can and can't do.
It seemed like you two guys really fill each other out.
I'm the late guy. He's like, Johnny will be there at 5 o'clock. Like I'm the late guy, and Johnny, like, he gets it done, in which I'm like hesitant on things, and I'm not good at, like, I don't want to show up for meetings because it's hard for me to not be like transparent, because I'm also an artist, and to remain that, like, you have to remain true to yourself, and it's hard for me to be in rooms like doing fake politics and like having fake conversations. It's hard because that exists in a world where you have to put on smiles and when you're not really happy about something. And he's good with that, he's good with being the host when somebody has to come to town and be like, yo, show me around Philadelphia. I'm awful at that. It's like, I don't do anything.
He sounded smooth. He moved quickly. I was just like, all right, man.
yeah. He's going to send emails on time. Like, these are the things that, like, could destroy someone's career, essentially, when they're like, yeah, I like the artist, but their team is impossible. And so, like, he's the balance for sure. It wouldn't be possible without him at all. Like, he's 100% the balance.
But you're half of that. And how did your half of that come about, even though, in addition to being the recording engineer?
Because I think it ends up all, like, being one and the same. I think people, because I am responsible for the creative direction, like, I also do need to be on the calls. I am on the calls. I'm just not saying anything because I need to make sure that everybody's on the same page. And I know it seems a bit micromanaged, but like I need to know that like this baby's going to get there safely, and nobody's going to drop it along the way. So I'm on the calls, and like I am trying to gauge and read on who really cares about her records. So I am the guy that will ask, like, well, what's your favorite record? And if you like, you're not pronouncing the record right, that things like that bother me, because it's like you don't have any genuine interest in this in the way that we do. We took a meeting with a company. I won't name the company or whatever. We took a meeting with a company. The whole time, the guy, he's showing us around the building. He said her name wrong the whole day. And I'm just like, this is insane. You don't, like, there are interviews, there are records. You don't even know how to say her name. And it's just Tierra Whack. And he just kept saying Tiara. And I'm like, and that's things like that. We ended up, of course, not working with the company, but things like that like, are very important to me. But to get back to your question, it's like the management side comes from like managing what has been created. Once it's bounced out, it's like, okay, here's the baby. I'm carrying it myself. Like, and I'm going to go into the building with this baby and express to everybody what this baby is and what it is that we're doing with it.
That's a great point, because nowadays, and I don't know how many years it's been crucial, creating and recording and releasing a song is really just one part of it. So if we're going to stick with the paternal and maternal connection here, the image, the promotion, the video, the visual, in your guys' case, the fashion.
Yep.
The visual aspect of what you guys do, I think, is just as interesting as the music, and that's crazy to me because the music is great.
Yeah.
I like all the songs. I mean, shit. My youngest every other week he's got these Mario Brothers slippers, and he'll go Mario and Luigi. Yeah. So like the end of that one cut, that's his favorite part, and I'm sure you've heard that before from various people. But that's his favorite song, and just that little clip at the and Luigi. Yeah. And he'll say it to me at least once every 2 weeks. So you know that he's a real fan.
Yeah,
because
100%.
He can quote the song at the end, but the visual element, everything meshes seamlessly. Yeah. And kudos, man. Yeah. That's amazing.
I think that's because we're all on top of it from, start to finish. We don't leave it in nobody's hands, like at no point in time. So even like if we're hiring a director that we love, like we're there discussing the treatment as well. It's like, well, we're not doing that. And like we're okay with this, and can we shoot it with this, down to like the camera, the lenses that are being, like, we're there for all parts.
Well, everything is highly stylized. Yeah. And I assume it seemed like a natural fit. You guys have some heavy endorsements. I mean, you've done stuff with Apple. Yeah. I saw it was a great commercial promo for Adobe. Yeah. And instantly I was like, of course, Adobe, being able to create, produce, be creative, the environment that it was shot, the scene between the fictional and the nonfiction, it looked great. I just felt like it was a natural fit.
Yeah, they I think a lot of those companies are excited about like her being in a world that they always wanted to tap into, but it always ended up like, oh, well, that guy, like, the music's too left, and it's like, well, we can't do that. It's not safe for our brand. And Tierra, for the most part, she's pretty brand safe, especially for things like Adobe. We have something actually coming up with Lego as well, so she's like very brand safe.
And that's interesting. Do you feel a pressure with that? Meaning, what if you guys, in just the natural flow of things, wanted to go like whatever? Darker. Just in anything. To me, it's all the same. It's all creativity. But to be brand safe, that's an interesting concept. Does that feel a little scary?
It was always done naturally. And then when you start seeing like the emails and the people that are reaching out, you're like, oh, we're very safe. And she has, especially during this time that we're all going through, moments of darkness in which we would like to express. And then there is that moment like, oh, we have this relationship, and we don't, if they're not in the room when we're playing this record trying to describe, where it is that she was when creating this, we do get scared. Like, is this smart? And then, like, that's the weird portion when, you know, like you start trying to curate an art that's like more organic and natural for you. And so we're doing our best to stay away from it, but also like we do want to please the people that essentially fell in love with us.
Well, I mean, you're a business person.
Yeah.
At the same time.
Yeah.
So, but I could see that being an interesting balance.
Yeah.
There's an artist. You ever heard of Garth Brooks?
Yeah, of course.
It's like big country
Country,
star.
yeah,
I remember years ago. I guess he was like totally in a box. First of all, killer songwriter.
Yeah.
Gigantic star. I remember when I was younger, he did this show at Central Park, and there was like 500,000 people there.
Of course.
Mega. The ultimate. He's got these songs, you know, he's incredible, and I guess he wanted to do some rock stuff. So he went, did his hair different, put some makeup on, and released under a different name. I think he was one of the first guys to just, all right, well, this is my alter ego.
Yeah.
I mean, is that something that ever plays into discussions when you're discussing your and Tierra's art?
I think that becomes an uncomfortable space in which you feel like I'm forcing it.
Yeah.
Because it's like that's curating to please. It's like trying to, and that's not staying. And I hate to say it, but it's not staying true to yourself, because it's like, hey, I like people meet me and they can love me, but I also get upset sometimes. I'm also sad, you know. But that's all me. That all is right under the first name, Kenete. That's all. Like when I'm happy, when I'm sad, etc. And so it's like, if I'm like, well, no, this is Bryant, which is my middle name. It's like, this is Brian. It's like, you know, it's all Kenete. I'm just like, I feel like it's an excuse to be yourself, and we don't want to create excuses to like continue to be ourselves. It's like, well, hey, this is, you know. You just caught me at, you know how they say, like, you caught me at a bad time. And it's like, to somebody else, they might have caught me at a good time. Because it's like, oh, I didn't like the other version. Or, you know, the other mood. And that's like, I won't speak too much about it, but that's kind of like the theme of the next project. It's just about moods. And it's like, I didn't like the other mood, but I love this mood. And this is like the mood for me. And maybe when you get happy, or you get to a place in your life when you are happy, like, you know, you get to the other mood and be like, oh, I actually do enjoy this. Because it's all about, like, how you feel.
Well, everybody feels different.
Yeah.
I'm 2 to 3 different people each day.
Yeah.
And sometimes I need to tap into this type of art, and other times I need to stay away from that art.
Yep.
It's nice to have choices. It's like, again, like I said, it's sort of like a comforting blanket. Certain music, you know that there's a spot that can touch you regardless of what vibe you're having that day.
100%.
And something that was interesting that you guys, I don't know if it's still happening, but there was some, I thought it was hysterical. I just saw it as comedy. Some of the stories that Tierra was posting, sort of playing like a receptionist.
Yeah.
Like, what was the story with that? Because that seemed off-brand to me, where I'm like, well, this isn't extremely produced. She's obviously not.
That's her.
Wearing, like, it was silly as hell. And it was funny as hell, and I love comedy, so I'm like, yeah, let's get into that space.
We're actually, I can't speak on it, but we're actually going to try to do like something bigger with that. But that's Tierra every day. That's her when I'm like trying to call and talk about something serious. She's giving me another voice or whatever, and like occasionally I'll play around with her like that, and she does that with the whole crew. Like that's her, and all you're seeing is, you know, it projected on Instagram essentially.
Well, it's hysterical. And she's obviously a natural at it, so I can't wait to see some comedy. Especially this past year, obviously, but there's just been less comedy to tap into, you know, less shows, less stand-up, less everything. So we are like, we're digging so deep for comedy in my house, so I'm really looking forward to that. I welcome it. Bring it.
We have some things coming out. We're definitely excited about it. I wish I could talk about it, but you know.
Well, this keeps a little mystery.
Yeah.
How did you you've mentioned family several times.
Yeah.
Who, when you were coming up, turned you on to music?
My grandfather. My grandfather did. at an age in which I couldn't comprehend music too well. I just knew that it felt good, it sounded good, and I wanted to be around my grandfather. So he did. But my brother, who older at the time, 5 years older than me, like, he understood, and he had so like, that was buried in him, and, you know, of course he passed that on to me. So, like, it's a mixture of my grandfather, kind of like introduced to me by my grandfather, kind of instilled in me by my brother type thing.
What kind of stuff?
So it was more R&B, like, very early, just like all, like, slow jams, R&B, and I think, it was like, early R&B, and then, you know, actually my uncle, he rapped. Like, I have like a family full of, like, I play the saxophone, play keys. I definitely have a musical family, and I have a lot of cousins that sing or whatever. So I do come from, like, a musical family, but it was my grandfather who did, like, more more. I don't know what genre you would call it, but it's like an old school form of, like, R&B. It wasn't, like, heavily singing involved, but, like, I can't explain it. I'd love to play you some of it. I have, like, it on tape. I'd play you some of it.
You gotta send me a playlist. I want the grandfather jams.
Yeah, the grandfather jams. That's what I'll title it.
And how about your brother? What kind of stuff was
R&B, because he sung. So he was a singer. He actually ended up signing to, like, my brother had a deal with Def Jam. I think it was like 2006, 2007, and that's how I got a lot of the information, because I will always have, like, ideas, especially watching his career grow. But I was like the little brother. Nobody listens to the little brother. I'm like, man, if you do it, it was like, yeah, sure. Nobody listened, and I don't see him not being what it is that I thought he could be as failure. I see it as, like, it's success in its own way. I don't think he was finished. I think he did stop early, or than he should have. But I learned a lot.
He stopped performing and writing.
Yeah. He decided to, you know, and he works. He works as an exec at a label. So it was like, I didn't. From that he immediately moved to publishing, and from publishing he moved to, like, working at an actual label. I won't say which one, because I'm not sure if he, like, but, like, yeah. So, yeah. But that's how I learned so much about the business and the way that it works, and how, like, and this is back in the days when, like, labels used to do artist development, like, genuine artist development. You got to go to a vocal coach, like, dance lessons. And so, like, I watched all that, and how they would essentially create the artist and then force it on you by way of, like, radio play.
Well, that was the lure of a record deal too.
Yeah.
I mean, it's I assume it's hard to say no to a record deal if you're out there really grinding, and if that's your dream to be signed and to have some kind of support. A lot of people say yes to anything.
Yeah.
And you ended up becoming the I guess if that's the bad side of artist development, it seems like you've created and nurtured the positive side.
Yeah, because
artist developments. Maybe it's because you saw all that and were exposed to all that.
I did what they didn't do. I listened to the artist, and and that's why I say, like, you know, Tierra may look at it as me leading her, but I just guide from in back of her. It's like if you grab somebody's shoulder, like, nope, go this way. That's all I do. But it's all your vision, and so we have, like, when we met, we had a big conversation, like, what is it that you want to do? And when I meet with artists now that, like, I'm offering help to, do the same thing. What is it that you want? And I can tell you whether or not I can help you, because I'm not here to change you. I need this. It has to be something that I can see, or, like, that I can help you with. I don't take on jobs that I can't do. Like, if you're like, yo, like, just YouTube on how to be a chef real quick to cook this big dinner for my family, I'm like, nah, I'm good. Like, if you can't find a chef, like, make the dinner for another date. I'm not doing that. So I don't fill out applications for jobs I don't meet the criteria for, genuinely. And so when I meet an artist, I'm like, what's your story, and what is it that you want to do? What are your do's and don'ts, and what are your no's, and, like, can you listen? That's really important, because I think sometimes as an artist we get so lost in being the creative that we forget that there is a business side to this. And so what's the safe way to put it? It's like, if I'm trying to open up a daycare, And it's like, that's a cool idea. Whatever, I guess. It's not like nothing to be like, I'm trying to run a daycare. The business part comes in, like, where you can put the daycare, especially like zoning laws, etc., like how many kids you can have, like that's the side that, like, a lot of artists don't get. And to remain creative, I don't think they should spend that much time doing there. So the goal when I do, and I think what we all should do when we meet an artist is like, what is it that you want to do? And I can tell you where you're going to hit brick walls at, but that, hey, we can hop those, or I have a ladder to get over that, or maybe we can get around it this way. I just need to know what it is that you want to do, because I'm only trying to guide you with your vision. And if I can't do that, I don't want to be a part.
How many artists, what percentage of artists come to you and are able to answer that question definitively?
Out of 10, maybe 2?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's rare.
Yeah, because they all, if you ever start, like, I just want to be big and just want to, like, yeah, like, that's not an answer. Like, more importantly, like, everybody wants to be big, I guess. And I think more importantly, like, the first thing to know is, like, who you are as a person.
Yes.
And you don't have to have that completed, but it would make me comfortable to know that you're working on that. Because, artistry is a reflection of yourself. If I'm working with you, I'm not creating anything. So who you say you are, and, these lyrics that you put out, like, I'm believing you. And so if artistry is a reflection of yourself, I need to see that you know yourself and you're comfortable with yourself, even, like, and more importantly, your insecurities. And having that no fear factor, that's the thing that's really important, like that no fear factor. Like, hey, like, don't be afraid to embarrass yourself. I love that. People who aren't afraid to embarrass yourself, because you only can learn.
Well, in a recording studio, that's huge, especially if you're a vocalist or a writer. You want, as a producer or as an engineer, you want the artist to try every single thing they could think of, but most people are pretty scared to try something, because they're like, that's gonna sound ridiculous, my voice is gonna crack, that's offensive, like, whatever it is. The average person shies away from this idea of feeling embarrassed, but art, it needs to be out there in that way. How do you foster that in an artist, other than just, I mean, you're a nice guy, so I assume people just feel comfortable around you, but how do you gently bring that out of people to the point, because you work with many artists, and how do they feel comfortable to try that thing that's crazy? And how often is that crazy thing the thing that's hot?
Because I think I get to know them, because like we spoke about, like, trust. Like, you got to get to know them, because for them to express themselves in the way that may be needed, will be needed, have to be comfortable with you. And so I'm transparent, so a lot of times I'm just talking about, like, how I grew up, and things that I went through, like who my brother is, and how I didn't use, like, I didn't, and we can revisit this, but I didn't get here by using my brother's connections, and a lot of people assume that. He actually, like, me and him, like, not a heated conversation, he was actually upset, like, I have it, this all, and I'm like, nah, I can figure it out. It's a bit stubborn, but it worked. And so I guess, most importantly, I'm trying to build a bond with you first. If we don't vibe or we don't connect, like, there's no way that you're going to be able to create in a comfortable space, or, like, be the best version of yourself, because that's all that matters, is that you're being the best version of yourself that you can possibly be. And I guess, like, that's where I started. And after that, like, once they understand me, and that, like, hey, Kenny doesn't answer his phone all the time, and, like, he gets weird, and, like, sometimes, like, I can't read his face. When they're in the room with me, they're not offended, and they know who I am, and when they also know when I'm giving advice or information, that I'm, like, I try to remain neutral, like, hey, here's my opinion. You can always also do what you want. Like, and I'm going to move with you still. And then what happens a lot of times, they notice that, hey, he's only giving his opinion when it matters, and typically, or when I have moved opposite of that, it didn't work in my favor. So, like, let me try listening. If I give you lotto numbers 3 times in a row, if I come back with the 4, if you're for sure going to be like, of course, like, these are right. And that's all it is that, like, they have to see that you're right at least once or 2 times, and then also understand that, like, there is like a batting average here. Like, he did strike on that one, but like whatever, he home run the other 4. You get what I mean? So like, I guess like building a trust in which, like, because I'm trying to guide you from in back of you, and nobody wants you behind them. Like, everybody wants to follow you to where they're going, but I'm like, no, you can get there.
Well, I assume that increased exponentially as the success with Tierra's career increased exponentially. So people, it's like, don't just show me where to go, man. Just tell me what to do. And I'll do it. I'll do anything. So
and it's like,
that's just weird.
It's like, nah, that's not how it works. It's like, know who you are, and like, know that like you're in front of me, and I'm just like, no, it's to the left. Where you told me you were trying to go at the start of this, like, it's to the left. No, I'm gonna go right. Okay, man. Because I'm not the one that you're gonna blame. When it like,
so it's also protective.
Yeah, it's very protective. Like, I'm also the one that you're gonna blame. So like, you're always allowed to do whatever you want. And then like, I do end up in a lot of spaces in which is like, no, I'm only doing what you tell me to do, and I'm not moving until you tell me. It's like, oh, okay, cool.
Well, people need to be reminded that no great art has ever been created where the person wasn't putting themselves out there, wasn't being completely original, wasn't being completely real. Nothing lasts except for maybe like immediate pop things, and there's a place for that, and I love a lot of that stuff. But outside of immediate pop, there's no example. All the best artists put themselves out there. They all took risks. They all had dramatic failures. I always like to talk about Thomas Edison with my kids. I'm like, you know, you learn about this inventor and this Jersey guy, but the amount of successes are dwarfed to the amount of failures. And that's about risk. That's about fearlessness. You mentioned fearlessness and bravery. And I think that's the best instinct in any creative person, whether it's in science, technology, art, anything, relationships, even, and communicating with people and not being afraid to sort of tell the truth sometimes. When did you, what was the gig or whatever it was where you're like, oh my gosh, this thing with Tierra is gigantic now, like it's massive? Was there a moment where you, even she, you know, both of you were like, oh shit?
Probably the Grammy nom.
2019 Grammy nomination?
Yeah, for Mumbo Jumbo. And Mumbo Jumbo is a song with no lyrics. Like, in the video, we love, Marco Prestini did that. We love it. It was that. It's like, oh, we just nominated, and we broke all the rules. We were breaking rules. The song didn't have any lyrics. That was it. And how that came about, she creates melodies based off of, she does the melody first without any lyrics. So, you know, like,
so just scat, like a melody.
100% over the beat. And it was like what would be a verse and I guess a hook. And she was like, what do you think about this? I'm like, this is crazy. It's fire. So I like slid it around and like doubled it, and so it just repeats. If you listen to it, the melody just repeats. It's like would be a verse and a hook, and it just repeats. And then she was like, all right, because like she had like I forget what she just got pulled, but like she couldn't really talk, and she was like, I'm gonna come back tomorrow to finish it. I'm like, nah, it's done. I was like, we're good. I was like, it feels good. And I think that's what matters most in music, is that like how it feels. I'm like,
did she feel it right away too?
Yeah,
you know, it's kind of weird. She's a vocalist and there's no vocals.
But there's also that artist person. She was like, you sure? I'm like, nah. I was like, yeah, it feels good. And I was like, and so what? If we were like wrong, it's not forced. It's like, this is a real melody. This wasn't the idea before the song. We made that with intent to create lyrics, an actual what people will call a record, but midway through, you're like, oh, this is done. Like, you know, that's what it was. And
that's so badass. And then that gets nominated for a Grammy. That reminds me, you know, one of my favorite film directors is Stanley Kubrick. And one of my favorite films by him is Space Odyssey, 2001.
Okay.
And there is like little to no dialogue. It's like a 3-hour film. And there's really
no dialogue.
The little bit of dialogue that's in it is almost meaningless. It's another type of experience. It's telling a story, but without people telling you the story. So I would liken that song to Space Odyssey 2001.
100%.
Did that give you the confidence? Like, okay, well, if we just did this and it broke all the rules, has no lyrics, gets a Grammy nomination, did you feel freer after that, or was it more like a validation of the freedom you already felt?
Validation of the freedom that I already felt, because I'm a strong believer, and I think a lot of artists make this mistake of creating music to please people. I think you should create music to please yourself and hope that others enjoy it. And I think you have a longer career doing that, because you know yourself well enough. The crowd is always ever changing, and your fans that love you, essentially, they'll always move with you if you're creating things that you enjoy and also hope that others will. Because I think it's hard to please the crowd, and so if you just please yourself.
Well, it's impossible to know where they're going to be tomorrow.
Yep, 100%.
You could take a snapshot. Here's where they're at today. But if you're creating something, by the time you finish creating it, now it's tomorrow. Where's the crowd?
100%. Especially if you're an individual with taste, and
that's right.
I'd like to say we have a bit of taste. And
you guys have all the taste in the world, man. I really dig the music so much. So you're crazy busy.
Yeah.
How do you slow down? Because as you describe yourself, you describe yourself introverted. You don't describe yourself as reflective, but I can tell you're a reflective person. How do you slow down and not burn out? Because you're going 1,000 miles an hour right now. And you have been for some time.
I think you get to a place where 1,000 miles per hour isn't that fast anymore. I think that's the place. Because even on the personal side, I've dealt with loss, and it gets hard to not bring that energy to the studio, and then I'm on the calls that I don't like to be on, and people can tell that Kenete's usually not here on the car, but he's it's more intense this time. He's definitely out of it. There's a version of me that people can accept and enjoy on a call, in which I'm not on, but there's also a version that's present and probably makes people uncomfortable. And then by the time the call's over, I'm oh geez, Johnny's doing a bunch of disclaimers, probably pre and post, hey guys, before we get on the call, Kenete's going through this, whatever the case may be. And I think I a lot of times I get into a space in which 1,000 miles per hour isn't that fast, and that's dangerous. That's very dangerous, because I don't think you don't realize the damage it could do moving that fast, especially when you don't feel like you're moving that fast until you've already hit. And
plus you're able to relate to less people.
Yeah,
it's a lonely place at times.
Yeah, because you I think what you do in little, you do in big, and I've been the same way, always an introvert, and so not that finances change people. I think it only enhances who you are. So now I'm able to buy the apartment in the back of the complex that's away from everybody, and I don't have to answer all phone calls. I don't respond to all texts, and friends are oh, you're being different, and it's no, I've been this way. Anybody that knows me know I've shown up late. I don't answer all phone calls. I don't reply to text messages. I miss out on events. I've always lived more in my head than I did in I guess the physical world, and I don't like it. I think what has happened to me is that moving 1,000 miles per hour has become very comfortable for me, but I also see it as being a bit dangerous. So I did, because I never want to be destructive or destroy what it is that we all have built. So I did I hired an assistant engineer, especially and this time I've hired Hank, incredible dude, and I've tried to like stay home a bit more. And I know it can be frustrating to her and Johnny when they're calling me like, yo, what are we doing with this? And I'm like, I don't know, I'll let you know later. But it's like, it's procrastination at that point. It's procrastination. It's really like, I'll let you know later, but really it's like, I'll think about it later. And like, if you ask me something now and it's something that's going to take me time, like if I think about it now, I can have an answer to you maybe in 25 minutes. But if I'm telling you I'm going to think about it later, that means the thought process doesn't start till later, if I get to it. And then you may have another day or two before I come up with an answer. And because we have a system in which we all move like a unit, it could be annoying when like all, the pieces are together and they're just waiting for me to be like, all right, are we doing this? Or like, did you change your mind? And I'm like, yeah, just give me a minute. And it's because I'm trying to like, I'm pretending to be normal sometimes. Like I'm pretending, like I'm putting on faces and I'm trying to act as if like, I guess everything is like good and I can handle it. Because I think we work in a way that like, if one piece is off, it's all. It could essentially fall apart. So what I have been able to do was hire an assistant to kind of like that leg that's off balance on the table, like you put a piece of wood under it. I mean, like, and not like, I'm not comparing Hank to a piece of wood. Like he matters. He's actually just been a leg. He's like, hey, I can be the leg until you get yours fixed, type of thing.
So how do you, when you feel that things are getting to that spot of potential danger, like the red light might be blinking a little in your head, what do you do in your life to help you to come down a bit? Because I know you're a fit guy. Does fitness have something to do with it?
A cycle. You sent me the socks. I'm not going to forget about that.
I want to go biking with you.
Yeah, it helps. Being able to ride. And of course, I ride with a group called the Philly Hill Bombers, and I think we all work in industries that are very intense. And we come together and like we all just ride, and I think all troubles and everything like just forgotten about. Nobody's on the call. Like I've taken like one conference call while I was on my bike, and people were like, "Kenny, what are you like doing?" But
that's
like
dangerous as hell. Yeah.
But I'm like, and especially when somebody's like, "On your left," and I'm like, "Oh wait." So,
Excuse me.
Excuse me.
When did you get into cycling?
Yeah, like when COVID started, I think, and it was really just like, I'll try it. A, cycling is an expensive hobby, and B, if you take it serious. Like I got into it, and then like, you get out there, and then I think my average was like, I thought I was moving pretty fast, and my average was like 9 miles per hour or whatever, and I'm like, yeah, I'm like moving. And then you start going on like actual like trails. There's a trail in Philadelphia called the SRT, which is Schuylkill Kill River Trail. You get on there, and then there's some professionals on there, and he's like zooming past you. I'm like, oh, he can't be going that much faster than me. Like I thought 9 miles per hour was pretty fast on nobody. He's not like walking. So you start trying to keep up, and you're like, this is hard. Like to keep an average, like early on to keep an average of like 12 miles per hour was hard for me. So I'm like, okay. So you start like Googling, and then you start getting into like, of course, like Lance Armstrong. You're like, how is he? And then in my head, like, and I don't encourage this, but like, I'm like, oh, I see why he was taking drugs. Like this is, and like, this is intense, and this is like he's 30, and then I'm like reading like 30 miles per hour. Who's doing that on the bike?
Well, when you buy your helmet, you buy your steroids, you get your bib. I just learned what bibs were. I'm getting sort of steeped in it right now because I got into it probably the same exact time as you. I always thought about it, and then I'm like, shit. And then I realized how hard it was to find a bike because everyone was looking for a bike last March.
Yes.
And the guys are like, yeah, well, we'll probably get those in about 7 months, maybe. And I'm like, oh, shit.
Yep. And so I like when I started, I think I had a I started off with a pretty good bike. I moved up to something better, but like I was riding in basketball shorts and like, a t-shirt, and then cuz I'm all, as a kid you're like, oh, and cycling gear is corny, and I'm like,
dude, everyone clowns someone going by as a previous guest, Brian Baker, said, looking like a superhero.
Yeah, 100%.
That's what he called it.
And then when you like get into it, you're like, oh, all that stuff is needed if I ever want to go that fast. Like I didn't know what clip-ins were.
Yeah.
Like I'm like, no, just use a pedal. You use a simple platform. I can catch him. No, you can't. Like you can't. You have to get bibs. You have to like, because saddle sores are a thing that I got a few times. I'm like, why am I getting sores? And I'm like, it's like I rode a bike as a kid. This never happened.
Oh, this isn't riding a bike as a kid. That's for sure.
Yeah. It's not a BMX freestyle bike.
And as far as clipping your feet in, it's amazing. I didn't realize. Oh, right. If you're not clipped in, or at least have a basket or a cage, you're only doing half of the work.
Yep. There's an up pedal.
There's an up that no one ever thought about.
There's an upstroke too.
Took us our whole lives to. Oh, right. Right.
And then you realize how expensive these bikes can get. And you're like, oh, like this is like a thing. That's when I at the beginning it was just to clear my mind. I was like joyriding. And I'm like, yeah, I did like 20 miles. But 20 miles joyriding is a big difference than like, hey, I'm averaging 18, 19 miles per hour on this ride. And I started being able to do that. I got with the group. Mike Moore got me in the group. He was like, yeah, me and the fellas ride. I'm like, yeah, cool. I thought I was pretty fast. First ride, they go. I'm like, okay. And they just like, they're leaving me. Leaving me and then leaving me. And so they wait for me at the end. And I'm like, what am I doing wrong? And it's like, I didn't understand changing gears properly.
Yes.
And like breathing, it's very, like all of this is very important. And they weren't like extremely fast. They were just faster than me. I think at the time they were averaging like 15 miles per hour on easy stretches. But because I'm at 9, and I tell people there's a big difference between averaging 13 miles per hour and 15. I know it's only 2 miles per hour, but it's a big difference. So got into it. It became super fun. We became a family. I got better. Like I think I'm a lot better. I can average.
Are you not the worst guy in the group now?
I am not the worst guy in the group.
Someone else has that title?
Yeah. Somebody else has that title. We, actually, like, there were a group of fellas who joined after me, and we called them, like, it's called the Philly Hill Bombers. And there were a group of fellas that joined after me, and, like, they were given the title Baby Bombers. I'm so glad I wasn't part of that phase, but yeah.
That's hysterical.
Yeah.
So how does so fitness allows you? Is that
Yes.
Is that what gets you down?
Yeah. That
back.
Yes.
Back down to normal.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's cardio.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And you have to focus. It's very zen. You can't really focus on anything else. You have to focus on what's in front of you.
100%.
And you're just doing the same. It's a meditation.
Yep.
You're just doing the same thing.
Yep.
Over and over and over, and it hurts.
And
then it doesn't hurt.
It hurts. Then it does. You know what? It always hurts. You just like you just become, I guess, immune to it after a while. Like, it's like it's there. It's a pain that exists that doesn't bother you anymore. This one guy stated that like, what did he say? I think he said that like, it never gets easier, you just get better at it. And like I realized that with cycling, like it technically never gets easier, because in my mind I'm like, oh, this is easier, and it's like, no, it's not, because if it technically, I guess it's impossible for it to get like easier. It's always hard. You just get better at doing it, essentially.
If you're focused on real improvement,
yeah,
there's no such thing as easier. You increase the challenge, you increase the struggle.
Yeah.
100%. I think that's a good metaphor for life.
Yeah, 100%.
Dude, I appreciate you taking the time today.
Yeah.
Folks, if you have not checked out Kenete Simms' work with Tierra Whack and other projects he's involved in, I highly suggest you do it. This is great music. This is high art, in my opinion, and I'm honored to have you on the show today, and I really appreciate you making time. I appreciate your friendship.
Yeah, thank you, man. And I genuinely appreciate you. Always send me texts like, hey, hope you're doing well. Sending the socks was like, it's a big thing. They're socks, but it's like a big thing for me, because, so I genuinely appreciate you, boss, man. Thank you.
Folks, you heard it here. Send socks.
Send socks
to the people you care about.
100%. Thank you, Michael.
All right, man. That's our show. Thank you very much. Have a great day, everyone.